Welcome to Herbally Yours, an adventure into the world of natural medicine. Here is your host, Dr. Ellen Kamai, the natural nurse who will help you take the leap to ultimate wellness.
Greetings, and thank you for joining me, Ellen Kamai, the natural nurse, for another edition of Herbally Yours, right here on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. Herbally Yours brings you the latest information about the many facets in the world of natural living. And today we are so happy to have on board as our guest, Justin Bethoney. Justin is a psychiatric nurse practitioner, and he has written a book called The Mental Wellness Diet, Ancient Wisdom, Evolving Science, and Modern Day Options. Justin graduated from Massachusetts General Hospital Institute of Health Professions and operates a private practice as a psychiatric nurse practitioner. He services both children and adults for psychiatric medication management and therapy in outpatient settings. Justin's practice's primary focus on those who are functional, like working and attending school, but suffering with emotional distress, including anxiety, mood disorders, and ADHD. In his book, The Mental Wellness Diet, Justin shares his experiences along with scientific proof that if we feed our brain the nutrients it craves, we will be better able to feel and function at our best. So thank you so much for joining us today, Justin.
Yes, thank you for having me.
So I was attracted to looking at your book because, for one thing, you're a nurse. In fact, you're a nurse practitioner. So let's go back in time and share a little bit with our audience your path to becoming a professional nurse practitioner.
Okay, great. Yeah, I mean, it was after college, my mom recommended that I look into becoming a nurse practitioner. And I was initially resistant to the idea, but, she was convincing and I applied and eventually got in. And I love it. It turned out to be a really great career. You really get to help people. And with the way that healthcare is set up, often nurse practitioners get to spend more time with their patients. And so that's kind of exactly how my practice is, typically.
And that particular degree is becoming more and more powerful. It varies by states, but here in Florida, nurse practitioners do not have to work under a doctor. They can be autonomous and open their own clinics, and they are all over the place, as well as having their own practice.
So that's true for me in Oregon, which is a blessing. Yeah, it's great.
And so was your initial resistance because we think of nursing as more of a female profession?
How'd you guess?
Well, I think that is a thought form that's been, more true in the past and less true as we move forward. And as you said, because it is like, wonderful training. And right from the beginning, it's more holistic than just, let's say, a physician's training.
Yeah, I would agree. I remember the first month, we learned the nursing diagnoses, and all of us were really antsy with our stethoscope and blood pressure cuffs. We wanted to get into the medicine part, but they had us understand the philosophy of nursing and how to approach patients and what you're really doing. It's less of the medical model, the algorithmic, this for that. It's more about helping the person help themselves, which I think is great. And actually, coincidentally, did meet my original philosophy about life anyway. So it really was a great match.
Absolutely. And then, as you went along, how did you become a specialist in psychiatric nursing?
Well, that was my intention going into school. As you go into nurse practitioner school, there's a in the beginning, it's a bit general, but you eventually have to pick your specialty. So pediatrics, primary care, adult, geriatrics, acute.
OBGYN.
Yeah, those are all different tracks. And so I was always not so much into the blood and guts, but really interested in psych. So that was kind of my path from the beginning.
So what a very good fit for you. What about, let's say, the psychic aspects or the psychological aspects drew you to it?
I don't know. I think it was just I think everybody's kind of born with a certain temperament, certain set of talents, and then whatever you're interested in. and all those kind of combined. My mom, who recommended that I look into nurse practitioner school, she was a psychiatric nurse, an RN herself.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
That's a good model.
Yeah. And she trained under, I think, Ida Jean Orlando, who I guess trained under Hildegard Peplau. She went to Salve Regina in Rhode Island. And so she had a lot of that really great tradition and started her nursing career in Boston herself.
What a great story. So she must be so proud of you following in her footsteps. But you have even gone further. Now, the name of your book is The Mental Wellness Diet, Ancient Wisdom, Evolving Science, Modern Day Options. That's a great name.
Thank you.
So what made you decide to write a book? And by the way, this book is available online and elsewhere, The Mental Wellness Diet by Justin Bethoney, nurse practitioner. And it's 251 pages. That's a pretty extensive amount of information.
Yeah, and it has about as many scientific references to kind of support the ideas in the book, too. The book
that's always been my focus as a natural health care provider, because I'm certified in functional medicine as well as being a PhD RN, and I've been doing this since 1964, also as an herbalist. But what we find is so much of the traditional teachings, particularly in functional medicine and holistic medicine, once they get around to doing scientific studies, actually validates it.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. Well, yeah, I mean, some of our best psychiatric medications, I think Valium came from valerian root, so the scientists in the lab, the pharmaceutical industries, they know the deal. They just kind of take those plants and create some sort of patentable medication from it. So it's definitely there. All the power's there.
Yeah, patentable is certainly the, main word when we're talking about pharmaceuticals, because that's how they're able to get such high prices for things.
Mm-hmm.
But now with our current societal and all the challenges that we've had over the last few years with the pandemic, I would say from my experience, it has vastly increased mental health issues and anxiety and feelings like that.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely see it in my office for sure.
So when we're looking at your book, there's a lot of information there. For instance, what is the connection between diet and mental illness symptoms?
Sure. Well, if your body's not well fed, this is really commonsensical. If you didn't eat breakfast, or if I didn't eat breakfast, I might, lose my words, or I might get tired, or, if you don't eat well and you play sports, you might not perform as well. There's just a commonsensical link there. But the brain is inside the body. The brain is an organ. The brain is very metabolically active. The brain has a lot of needs, just like the hearts or lung or muscles. And so that's, the main idea. What I wanted to do with the book was help people understand when they eat food and the food goes in their body, what's happening there. The connection between, everybody kind of knows that if I eat better, I'll feel better. Or if I eat better, I'll be able to, be less depressed or less anxious. People just kind of have this intuitive sense. What I try to do in the book is, bear down and try to connect more of the dots. Like, this food has this nutrient. This nutrient participates in this metabolic process. This metabolic process helps with this specific brain function. And if you have this specific brain function in good order, then you're going to feel or function better.
That's an excellent way of looking at it. Let's just pick any nutrient, and put it through those paces that you just described.
Well, where to begin? One of the more popular ones nowadays is vitamin D. Vitamin D doesn't just have one function in the body, but, it does participate in the brain in taming inflammation. And too much inflammation in the brain is going to create a kind of like static, too much excitation in the brain. So that has like a balancing effect. Vitamin D also participates in the creation of serotonin. Serotonin is a calming, helps you experience joy. It helps regulate sleep and appetite. So enough vitamin D through sunlight and fatty fish and other foods can be there when you need it to kind of help create serotonin and help you feel better. So that's one example.
So when it comes to something like vitamin D, one thing that I do a lot in my practice, and I'm not sure if you do this or not, but I really think there are so many excellent tests available now, such as SpectraCell and lots of others of those kinds of tests, Genova Lab, that really do very deep testing so you can see a picture not only of your vitamin D status. And by the way, with vitamin D, we want to test hydroxy vitamin D, not just vitamin D levels. And you can get a really great printout of what you might need. And I think that is underused in conventional medicine.
I agree. In practice, I don't always have patients coming to me because maybe they found my book or my website or my blog. They come to me because I live in town and I take their insurance. So sometimes, often it's a bit of a warm-up process to get people interested and excited about the power of nutrition and the power of lifestyle and diet and exercise. The people who are especially seem to see is the functional but suffering, and they're busy. Trying to get them to change their diet is it takes a bit of a warm-up process. So yeah, those tests, the simple blood work, especially the ones that are covered by insurance, I tend to run those a lot, and then do spend the time discussing it with them to kind of help get them motivated, thinking about wanting to make some changes and beginning to make some change.
Well, I actually saw a nurse practitioner here in Florida recently, and she runs a clinic. And I asked her about, can I get any of these tests done? Because I just like to get them done for myself and always have. And in particular, I like Genova Labs because they have a very in-depth analysis, even of the most minute micronutrients that, let's say, are within the Krebs cycle that creates your energy. Yeah. And if one of them is low, like in my case, I found out a very obscure one, which is molybdenum was low. Not terrible. I feel fine, but I rather find out about it before it interferes with those cycles completing themselves. Well, she actually was able to run that test because I have plain Medicare, not one of those fancy things, just plain Medicare. And just so you know, it was fully covered.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. So that was phenomenal because I didn't think any of these they're not esoteric. In fact, they should be mainstream, but they're not because they don't lead to the sale of increased medication. They increase to using someone like yourself who can go, okay, so how can we get through foods and possibly nutrients? Let's start with foods first. How can we raise those levels? But first, you need to know they're low. So it gives you such a great path.
Yeah, that's an interesting point about the insurance. So the way I set up my practice is probably unusual for a prescriber, up to 2 hours for the intake, but every follow-up I offer is an hour. And some people don't really need that, and they've been with me for a while, so they'll just do a half-hour check-in. But
a half an hour, Justin, most visits with physicians are 8 minutes.
Mm-hmm. So for these hour-long appointments, it's 2 codes. There's the management code, which is prescribing medication. So I get that. And, the insurance company has me take a discount on that billing. But then when I do the therapy add-on code, they pay me the full amount. The functional medicine, it's really interesting how functional medicine and integrative health is looping around to insurance. And we actually, insurance gets such a bad rap, but we actually believe the same things now, which is really interesting.
You should probably give workshops on that so that more providers can access that thought form because that's so excellent. Yeah, definitely with functional interventions, very often the first intake is an hour or more and subsequent visits are half an hour to an hour because we're dealing with a whole person, not just with a prescription pad that you're just writing a prescription on.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the best way to go. You can't see hundreds of people, but for each one person you see, you can do a really good job.
That's actually what got me into media, Justin, way back when, and writing books, because I've written 16 books. And why I was motivated to do that is, years ago, when I was seeing, close to 100 people a week. It was crazy. Yeah. I said, I can't keep doing this, and I can't see 200. So how do I get this information out? And that might have also motivated you to write this excellent book that gives so much information from your experience, which is called The Mental Wellness Diet. And a lot of people may not even associate diet with mental wellness.
Yeah, maybe not. Maybe not. There's a villain in my book, and the villain is modern day life. And so the villain is kind of insidious, behind the scenes, always lurking. The villains in our life are sugar, trans fats, the fast food, the processed food, the empty calorie foods, but also, too much screen time, too much disconnection, sedentary lifestyles. There's so much about modern day life that's convenient and fast and easy. And it kind of takes us away from these stressors that are actually really important for our minds and bodies. And so modern day life is the sneaky villain in my book.
Well, that's true. And, when you talk about fast food, it is amazing to me if you walk into a hospital and the food that's available there downstairs is a McDonald's, literally. Like they rent that space from the hospital and that's what there is to eat in the hospital.
It is really sad when you think about it. People there are at their worst. Nobody wants to be in the hospital. That's the food they're given to kind of heal. There's something really wrong about that.
It's majorly wrong. So it's for people like you to, step up, which you have done by actually gathering together the scientific data that supports the fact that that is just madness.
Yeah.
So you say scientific research has identified a mechanism of how various things are really used inside the system.
Yeah, I think one of the parts of the book that I'm most happy to share is there's 5 chapters in the end, and I broke down brain functions. Respond, which is about neurotransmitters. Fuel, which is about enough energy for the brain. Build, which is the structure, the outside of the neuronal membranes and all the oligodendrocytes and all the glue and all the communicating neurons. Protect, which is about the immune system that also is involved in the brain. And then balance, which is just the balance between, it's really interesting, the brain has a lot of go signals, excitation, but also has a lot of break, a lot of stop signals, which is inhibition. And that balance has to really be there for us to walk, talk, and chew gum at the same time. So for each of these last 5 chapters, there's in the back of the book, the back of the chapter, there's a table where it has one column, which is the nutrients, the vitamins, minerals, and other nutrients. The second column is the function, like how it participates in the brain. And then the third column is the food sources. And so you can just make those direct connections. But the other part that I really put a lot of work into was the diagrams. For example, the response chapter about neurotransmitters, it has a diagram that goes linearly from top to bottom, and it talks about for the basic raw materials for neurotransmitters, you need to eat dietary proteins for the amino acids. Having an healthy insulin response is helpful to get this specific.
Okay, so let's just tell our listeners a little bit more about what these things mean. Okay. So in terms of insulin response, what is insulin response?
Well, you eat carbohydrates or even protein or just food in general. And insulin is a hormone peptide that does a lot of different things in the body. But one of the things that it does is it shuttles sugar out of the blood and into various tissues. And then your tissues will use that energy source for later. But as the theory goes, what happens is when you have an insulin response that reaches around the brain, it will preferentially shuttle in tryptophan, tyrosine, and phenylalanine. The last 2 are the precursors to make dopamine, and tryptophan is the precursor to make serotonin. So once the brain has those amino acids, those key amino acids in the brain, and it's in a rest and digest parasympathetic state, it can then use iron, vitamin B3, which is niacin, vitamin B6, which is pyridoxine. Folate is important, vitamin C and vitamin D, and it will use all these nutrients to speed up enzymes. And these enzymes are all along this conveyor belt in this little factory that bring in the amino acids and then convert them into different forms until you finally have serotonin and dopamine, and then later on norepinephrine. The same thing happens for acetylcholine. So, there's just a factory conveyor belt thing going on, and it's all about eating food, amino acids, protein, and these specific micronutrients, vitamins, and minerals.
And I really do like these charts, like the one on 103, and that's specifically what you're talking about now in terms of the food sources of the neurotransmitters. And of course, there's a lot that has to go on there. That specific raw ingredient has to come in somehow, either through eating, usually through eating, or some of these things your body manufactures. And then all the enzymes have to be in place, which are often a problem in some people, in order for these transferences to take place, such as 5-HTP to serotonin. You have to have vitamin B6. Well, where is that coming from? You have to have magnesium and iron. By the way, I believe that iron has to be heme iron in order for it to operate efficiently. And you cannot get heme iron, for instance, from a vegetarian diet. So there's a lot to it.
Right. Well, and then you flip a few pages more, and then there's this table. So vitamin B6, where do you find that? Peppers, chives, shallots, onions, parsley, garlic, leeks, apricots, bananas, eggs, cheese, tuna, salmon. So what a wonderful thing to do to just have that imagination and think about a meal that you can make and just trust that it's going to help you feel better, because now you know the science, and now it kind of makes eating healthier more fun.
And you do talk a lot about protein. What about people who are strict vegans? What do you how do you work with them? Because I find that they're challenging and they often don't feel well either.
Yeah. I mean, I tried it once. I was always into trying different things. I think it was in the summer I read that book, Skinny Bitch. And so I tried that diet, and it was the worst I've ever felt in my life. But, other people who go from a junk food diet to a vegan vegetarian diet feel well. And that immediate transition, the benefit of that immediate transition, I think it's probably more about getting off the junk food, but they feel better. I would put food third behind politics and religion.
Interesting.
To get somebody to change it's really dicey. And so all I can do is, eat well myself, be a good role model, provide the information, and be there when they're ready, and kind of, point at, help people connect these dots. People got to see it to believe it.
And once someone does start to make some changes and feels better, I always notice that that's very motivational to take whatever the next step is.
Agreed. Yeah. It kind of gets the wheels on the train moving.
Also, if you're used to that, like Dunkin' Donuts first thing in the morning and then McDonald's for lunch, it's a big step to go to more of a whole foods natural diet. But what I tell people too is they actually feel psychologically threatened. Like they're not going to be able to eat that anymore. I go, no, you can have it once a week as a treat. It's like a fun thing, but it's not food. Not that I would ever eat it. I actually have never eaten in any of those fast food places, but for people who do, there's addictive qualities to it.
Yeah, I talk about the importance of how we make meaning out of our experiences in life, because at the end, it is a diet it is a book about mental wellness and mental health. And I think that's where I came up with the idea of modern day life and its food and its conveniences being the villain. People feel like it's their savior. Like, well, if I didn't have my Dunkin' Donuts, I wouldn't be able to. What the meaning they make out of it is that the Dunkin' Donuts is supremely helpful for them.
And it could be in terms of the ritual of going there. And if you go to the same one every day, there's a certain, you get to know even the people behind the counter as well as the same folks that are there online every day. So from a psychological point of view, that is supportive.
Sure. But then there's, maybe if somebody who doesn't exercise and they go for a jog and they're huffing and puffing in the beginning, that maybe they make meaning out of that this is bad for me.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
So
even though, of course, you got to work up when you're going to exercise.
Agreed. Yeah. So it's I think it's all about how we make meaning out of our experiences. And, there's so much like that politics, religion, then food thing. There's so much there for people, and it's so intimate and personal how they eat, how we all do that.
It's true. It's probably a combination of learned experience, familial expectations, and then things that we learn as with teenagers with peer group pressure. So it's very complex.
Mm-hmm.
And especially in a country such as ours, that's very culturally diverse.
Yeah.
So not everybody's eating the same way. And it certainly can change over time. But the good point about that is you can make your own decisions, and there is food available. And people who think junk food is cheaper, I've done analysis with several of my clients, made them actually write it down, and it's not. It's not cheaper.
No, it's not.
Because if you cook a pot of beans and rice, even just once a week, like on a Sunday, and then freeze some or soup and freeze it and use it all week, it's much less expensive.
Yeah, I remember that from my college days.
I still do it now because I don't have time to cook every single day, but I'll make a very, very healthy kind of cabbage-based soup and then dole it out and freeze some and keep some in the refrigerator, with lots of vegetables in it, beets and parsley and all kinds of things. Yeah, and it tastes really good, and it's so inexpensive. And I buy everything organic. Not everyone maybe could afford to do that, but it's not much different. Like a head of organic broccoli right now is maybe $1.50, and a regular one is 99 cents. It's like 50 cents more.
That's great. And that's your ritual.
That's true.
That has meaning for you.
So, that was really, really good information. Where can people find your book, Justin?
Sure. Well, I have my website, and it has everything you need. So it's www.thementalwellnessdietbook.com.
Now, what about just the mentalwellnessdiet.com, which is what I have? Oh, that's a blog.
My Instagram handle is the Mental Wellness Diet Book, and then the website is thementalwellnessdiet.com.
Okay, good. Yeah, because that's what I have, on all our shows. We do have a wonderful archive here at our station, WHPC. And so you can easily go there to get more information about Justin and get an actual link to find the book, which is phenomenal. It's really well written, comprehensive, very supportive, and really can give people a wonderful outline to feeling better and moving towards health. So I want to thank you so much, Justin Bethoney, nurse practitioner, psychiatric nurse, for being our guest today on Herbally Yours.
Yeah, thanks so much. Thanks for having me.
And thank you, listeners, for tuning into Herbally Yours, produced in the studios of 90.3 WHPC, Nassau Community College, Garden City, New York. For further information, email us at whpc@ncc.edu. This is your host, Ellen Kamai at naturalnurse.com, inviting you to join us again next week for another edition of Herbally Yours. Until then, stay healthy.